Hello, my name is Silas Bjorklund, and today I will be showing you the proper preparations and steps for safe and effective welding. Today we will be focusing on shielded metal arc welding, SMAW, or more commonly referred to as stick welding. First things first, you need to have the proper PPE or personal protective equipment. Proper PPE is crucial for any job, especially one that poses many short-term and long-term hazards such as welding. While the PPE you need may change based on the type of welding process you're using, these items should be used regardless of any method you go with. A welding hood. This can be auto darkening or fixed shade. A welding cap. Safety glasses or goggles, any kind that is ANSI Z87.1 certified and wraps around the side of your eyes will work well. A respirator. We will go into more detail for the proper respirator wear in the next slide. Leather welding jacket or sleeves. Leather welding gloves. The kind you will need will vary based on your welding process, but for shielded metal arc welding, make sure you wear designated stick welding gloves. Leather steel-toed boots, preferably one that doesn't use laces, but if they do, you might want to swap out your regular laces for some leather ones. And 100% cotton, wool, or work clothes. Why would you want 100% cotton or wool? If in the common chance a spark or chip of hot metal or slag lands on you and burns your clothing, cotton or wool clothing will simply burn and turn to ash. Synthetic fibers like polyester will actually melt instead of burning and have a high chance to melt onto your skin, turning a small burn into a possibly serious injury. So, thick 100% cotton or wool clothing is the way to go. Respirator type and fit. You should be going with a 3M 6000 series half-faced welding respirator mask. Make sure you are wearing them with the P100 cartridges, and you should make sure you're wearing it properly. It should be snug on your face, and you should make sure there are no gaps. Here's what the 6000 series half-faced welding respirator mask looks like with the proper P100 cartridges. And here's the correct way to wear it. Keep in mind that air wants to take the path of least resistance, so ensure that there are no gaps between your mask and your face. There are multiple ways you can properly check to see that the mask is on correctly, and I will share a link to a video on how to conduct these tests at the end of this PowerPoint. Equipment for SMAW. You'll need a welder to supply the power necessary for welding. You'll have a variety of options to choose from that vary based on the type of welding you will be doing. Your welder can be run from a power grid or engine-driven. The electrode holder. This is what holds your electrode while welding and what channels the current via the arc. It should be plugged into the positive terminal of your welder. The ground clamp. Equally necessary as the electrode holder, the ground clamp is required to complete the closed circuit between the welder, electrode holder, and the workpiece. This should be plugged into the negative terminal of your welder. The chipping hammer. This is used to break off the layer of slag that forms on the top of the weld. And you will likely need a vise clamp. This doesn't cover all the equipment that you'll likely need based on what type of welding you'll be doing, but these are certainly the bare minimum for stick welding. Electrodes. These are necessary for the stick welding process. They consist of the filler metal and are coated in a powdered flux that burns up in the weld pool and protects the molten metal from atmospheric contaminants. There are, however, multiple options for which electrode to use based on what type of welding you plan on doing. The majority of stick welding is either done with 6010 electrodes or 7018 electrodes. There are certainly pros and cons to either of them. 7018 is a good option because it can be used at higher amps, resulting in a smoother process and better weld quality. However, it has to be kept at a higher temperature via an electrode oven or short-term holder to keep its high temperature, or else the flux coating will start to crumble and lose its integrity, leading to welds that lose their strength and ductility. 6010, while not as smooth or as easy to use as 7018, certainly has a greater range of uses. It can be stored at room temperature, making it very convenient to use, especially in outside settings like pipe or structure welding, where a welding oven would be unusable. Adjusting your amperage. On your welder, you'll see a knob to adjust your amperage. This number will vary on the diameter of your electrode and the thickness of material you plan to weld. Luckily, there are many sources and charts for correct amps based on your electrode type and diameter, like this one. Here you can see on this chart that there are many different options based on your electrode and its diameter. Let's say that we've got some 6010 electrodes that have a diameter of 1/8 of an inch. According to this chart, our amps should be set to anywhere between 75 and 125 amps. Where you set it specifically will range on the thickness of your material and the type of material you plan to be welding, and other such variables. Practicing on some scrap metal is a great way to hone in on the perfect amperage settings for the welding you plan to do. Here are some examples of what your welds will look like if your amps are too low, too high, and when you have the correct amp settings. And here's what your weld should ideally look like. This is perfect amp settings, travel speed, and arc length. Getting all of these methods in tune takes lots of practice though. So, you've got your PPE, your equipment, and your welder is set up and ready. Looks like you're ready to get started. Please keep in mind that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of welding strategies and how to ensure that you are welding safely and effectively for your specific welding operation, but I hope that this presentation has served as an introduction for what's going to be required to start welding. Below I've included some helpful links and where you can find this information. Below is Miller's Introduction to Stick Welding, American Welding Society's Safety and Health Fact Sheet for Welding PPE, OSHA's extensive information on welding safety parameters, and a helpful video from 3M that I previously mentioned on how to make sure your respirator is on correctly. I hope this information was helpful for you, and thank you so much for listening.